Let's work through some examples. Example 1. A city council has requested a household survey be conducted in a suburban area of their city. The area is broken into many distinct and unique neighborhoods, some including large homes, some with only apartments, and others a diverse mixture of housing structures. Identify the sampling methods described below and comment on whether or not you think they would be effective in this setting. So pause the video here if you haven't been doing that and see if you can think about each of these. Okay, Part A. Randomly sample 50 households from the city. So what kind of sampling is this? A simple random sample. So this is usually an effective method as it assigns equal probability to each household to be picked. Part B. Dividing the city into neighborhoods and sample 20 households from each neighborhood. What kind of sampling is this? Good, stratified sampling. So this is an effective method in this setting since neighborhoods are unique and this method allows us to sample from each neighborhood. Okay, how about Part C? Divide the city into neighborhoods and then randomly sample 10 neighborhoods and sample all the households from those neighborhoods. What kind of sampling technique is this? Good, cluster sampling. We're picking everybody in one particular cluster. This is not an effective method in this setting since the resulting sample will not contain households from certain neighborhoods, right? And we're told that some of the neighborhoods are very different from others. Okay, Part D, divide the city into neighborhoods and randomly sample 10 neighborhoods and then randomly sample 20 households from those neighborhoods. We didn't cover this one in the 4 main ones. This is called a multi-stage sampling. If you're taking the AP, this does not show up on the AP, but this is a multi-stage sampling. So this method, again, is going to suffer from the same issues that we had in the earlier one. So this would not be very good. Part E, sample the 200 households closest to the city council offices. So this is just a convenience sample, right? This is not an effective method. This is the poorest of all of them, probably. It's going to result in a biased sample for households that are similar to each other, right? They're all in the same neighborhood. And the sample is certainly not going to contain houses from neighborhoods far from the city council offices. Example 2. Suppose a high school student wants to investigate the student body's opinion on food in the cafeteria. Let's assume that she manages to survey every student in the school. How might response bias arise in this context? So pause the video here and think about this. Okay, so there are a lot of different correct answers we could have for this. So students might respond differently depending upon who asked the question, such as a school friend or someone who works in the cafeteria, an administrator or a teacher. And the wording of the question could actually introduce response bias. Students would likely respond differently if asked, do you like the food in the cafeteria versus the food in the cafeteria is pretty bad, don't you think? Or we have leading questions. Example 3. We can easily access ratings for products, sellers, and companies through websites. These ratings are based only on those people who go out of their way to provide a rating. If 50% of the online reviews for a product are negative, do you think this means that 50% of the buyers are dissatisfied with the product? So just from my own experience, people seem to have a tendency to rant more about products that fall below expectations than rave about those that perform as expected or better than expected. So for this reason, I would suspect there's a negative bias in product ratings on sites like Amazon, Best Buy, and things like that. Example 4. Suppose we ask a student who happens to be majoring in nutrition to select several graduates for the study. What kind of students do you think she might collect? Do you think her sample would be representative of all graduates? Perhaps she would pick a disproportionate number of graduates from the health-related fields. Maybe maybe her selection would be well represented of the population. If we're selecting samples by hand, we sort of run the risk of picking a biased sample. So even if that bias is unintentional or is a bit difficult to discern. So if the student majored in nutrition picked a disproportionate number of graduates from health-related fields, this is going to introduce selection bias into the sample. And selection bias, this occurs when some individuals of the population are inherently more likely to be included in the sample than others. So in this example, bias creates a problem because a degree in health-related fields might take more or less time to complete than a degree in other fields. Suppose that it takes longer. I mean, since graduates from health-related fields would be more likely to be in the sample, the selection bias would cause her to overestimate the parameter.